نبدأ إن شاء الله. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with praising Him and sending His peace and blessings upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give us, to teach us beneficial knowledge and help us to increase in knowledge and act upon our knowledge. Inshallah, today we're just going to start with a basic introduction to Tafsir with the hopes of entering into Tafsir Al-Baghawi, inshallah. And I'll explain the reasoning why I chose that book, inshallah, when we get to that point. First of all, also I want the class, inshallah, or the jalsa to be like one of participation. So, which I'll mention again later, but if everybody or anybody wants to pick another tafsir and go along with us, inshallah, that would be beneficial if they hear, they have extra points or extra fa'idah benefits, inshallah, they can bring it along with us, inshallah, so we can all increase our knowledge with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, I'll be asking questions back and forth, so, it helps, inshallah, to increase our knowledge. It's one of the ways the Prophet ﷺ taught the companions. So first question is, why should we study tafsir? Anybody?
To understand the Qur'an.
Yes. To understand the Qur'an. Why is that important? It's the main guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to apply it to our lives. Without tafsir, because many of us, even the Arab, are far away from the original language of Arabi that Allah Azza wa Jal revealed to His people, they need an explanation, right? Even some of the companions obviously need an explanation from the Prophet ﷺ about certain ayat and certain words. So us, over 1400 years later, of course we need to understand even more so to get closer to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the benefit, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, that the best of you are those who learn the Qur'an and teach it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِنْ بِيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الرَّحْمَةُ إِلَّا غَشِيَتْهُمُ الرَّحْمَةُ وَنَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةُ وَحَفَتْهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. That a people do not gather together in a place to study or recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except that mercy will engulf them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send down His peace and tranquility, and the angels will cover them with their wings, and Allah Azza wa Jal will mention them to those close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heavens, meaning the angels and the best of companions, or the best of creation, basically. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention your names for attending a jalsa, a sitting or a meeting in which you are studying His book. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those, inshaAllah, that learn His book and apply His book. Allah, He says, إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ يَهْدِي لَلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَمُ وَيُبَشِّرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا كَبِيرًا. That verily this Qur'an leads to that which is best. That which is most right, aqwam, right? That thing that is standing the highest, that thing that is the dearest, the best. The Qur'an guides to this, right? And if you don't understand the Qur'an, you cannot be guided to what is best. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً وَبُشْرَى لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. That we have sent down this book that is clarifying for you everything that you need in your life, and the guidance and the mercy and the good tidings for the Muslims. So this book is the best, it guides to the best, it has everything that you need in it for your life, meaning the benefit of this dunya and the akhirah, if you can only understand it and apply it. It shows us the straight path, it's guiding us to what is right, it is giving us mercy, it is giving us the good tidings. All of this from studying the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who specializes or learns the tafsir of the Qur'an will be able to derive these benefits. Right? People who just read the Qur'an and don't understand the Qur'an, they're not going to derive these benefits. Like we had that dawrah, the seminar recently with Sheikh Ahmed Al-Himsi, in the book, which is Tibyan fi Akhlaq Hamlat Al-Qur'an, the clarification of those who hold the Qur'an, or memorize the Qur'an, or recite the Qur'an, or keep the Qur'an. And he mentioned in it the importance of learning and understanding the meaning of the Qur'an. Allah, He says, وَنَزَّلْنَا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that the Qur'an is a shifa and a mercy for the believers. It's a healing of the heart, healing from the amrad of the qalb, the sicknesses of the heart, a healing from depression, a healing from anxiety, a healing from corrupt thinking, a healing from evilness. This Qur'an heals us. Also, it was revealed for us to ponder upon. He said many times in this book and in that lecture, the explanation is that the goal of one should not be to do the khatam of the Qur'an all the time, khatam, 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 but the goal should be to understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can combine the both, that is the best. But tafsir is one of the ways that you can get closer to the book of Allah and understanding. Allah says, كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ مُبَارَكًا يُدَبِّرُ آيَاتِهِ وَلِتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, a book that Allah has sent down that is blessed. For what reason did He send it down? لِيُدَبِّرُ آيَاتِهِ, that you should ponder upon its ayat. وَيَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, and those who have knowledge, those who have understanding, those who have hearts that can encompass the knowledge, for them it is a reminder, for them to be reminded. And you can't have the pondering, you can't have the reminding unless you understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So, a far off example, if there's an awesome book in such and such language, right? I know some people speak Spanish, so I'm not going to say Spanish. Let's say like, who knows Chinese here? Bathman, mashallah. So, there's an awesome book. It's like the best book. Everybody's talking about it. And it's in Chinese. And then somebody gives you the copy in Chinese, and you don't know Chinese. Even though, for example, he teaches you how to read Chinese, but you don't understand one word of Chinese. Are you going to benefit from this book? No. So the Qur'an, which is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was revealed in the Arabic language, and it has deep meaning. So if you just read it without any understanding, you're not gaining this deep meaning. You're not getting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's why many people, may Allah protect us from that. Some of them even become hafiz of the Qur'an. They don't understand one word of it. And that's why they have sometimes su'al akhlaq, like bad character. Right? Because the Qur'an is not really moving their heart. They're just like another book on the shelf. You can pick it like a copy. Right? Alhamdulillah, it's fadl, it's blessing. We ask Allah to make us hafiz of His book. Alhamdulillah. However, if you don't understand it, how is it benefiting you and how are you benefiting others? Right? You have a beautiful voice, you recite, for example, you do the prayers, but you don't have no khushu' because you don't understand the words of ayat. The words of adab is the same to you as the words of Jannah. Right? Because you're not understanding as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended us to understand the book of His book, the Qur'an. Some of the purposes or reasonings others to study the Qur'an is, like we said, to get closer to Allah by learning His words. Also, it teaches us the correct belief system. Right? This book was revealed as a religion for us, a guidance to humanity. So encompassed in this book is our creed, our belief, our aqidah. Right? Also, it gives us the key to good conduct and good morals. يَهْدِي لَلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَمْ. Remember, this Qur'an, it pushes you to what is best. The best character, learning how the prophets lived, taking from their advice. It also is a set of laws and codes for us to conduct the society with. It's a guidance not only for you personally in your life, in your character, and your relationship with your families, but also it's a guidance for the communities at large, in politics, right? In building a community, in establishing justice, in establishing mercy, All of this is in the tafsir of the Qur'an. When we study it, we derive its deeper meanings. It gives us history of the previous nations, like learning of what nations did before us, why they were destroyed or why they succeeded, so that we may take heed, inshallah, and follow the way of the successful ones and stay away from those that were punished or destroyed. It gives us the glad tidings of Jannah, something to look forward to. If you read the Qur'an with understanding and you read the ayat of Jannah, subhanallah, if you really understand it in the Arabic language, it's hard not to cry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to long to be of Ahl al-Jannah. It gives us the warning of those who go astray or those who deserve punishment, Jahannam. The same thing when you read those ayat about the punishment and the adab, it moves your heart to be scared not to fall into that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. It proves the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ, because everything in it is truth, and the message of the Prophet ﷺ is truth, and this book has been protected since the time of the Prophet ﷺ to this very day, and we are still discovering miracles in this book until this very day that shows the sidq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this is some of the benefits. Like I said, there are whole books read about the fadail of the Qur'an and the fadail of Tafsir. Inshallah, you guys can go back and look it up. But it's a very important science. This is how Tafsir developed. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they knew how important it was, and they were very keen to learn its meanings, because they knew this was the most important hujjah. This was the strongest of all proofs. It's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they went out of their way to learn and to memorize with understanding. Some of them, would not take more than 10 ayah at a time, even though some of them had memories where they could memorize, poems, like hundreds of pages of poems so easily. But they wouldn't go past 10 ayahs until they took its meaning and they acted upon it. Right? Then they would go next to next. Some people would spend a whole year or 10 years on one surah to get its deep meaning. They could memorize the whole book easily, but they don't want it to be a hujjah alayhim. They don't want it to be a punishment or a proof against them. They want it to be a proof for them. So they take their time to understand, to memorize, to act on it. Many people in modern times, they memorize for the sake of memorization. Oh, I'm hafiz. Oh, I memorize the Qur'an. Oh, I know this qira'ah. Right? But the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, they didn't memorize to show off. They memorized so they can put the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into action, so that they can pray the night prayer with their memorization, so they can teach their children, so they can teach their community, so they can be in dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal, He revealed the Qur'an obviously in Arabiyyun Mubin, the clear Arabic language. So in general, Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they understood the ayat. They understood the best of all the generations to come, because they lived with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for that reason, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't necessarily explain every single ayah to the companions, because it wasn't necessary. Right? He explained those things that were necessary. We have many, ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explaining certain ayat because they needed explanation. Either it has a different meaning than the original language, Arabic language, or it takes on another meaning from the Shar'i, point of view. Can somebody give me an example? Like something that would with a Sahabi would require explanation of, even though they're masters of the Arabic language, and the Arabic language, was their mother tongue. But when the Qur'an was revealed, there's certain words in the Qur'an they might need a different explanation than what they're normally used to. Does anybody have an example? No examples. All right, from the 5 pillars of Islam, for example, Salah. The Salah that we know, the original meaning of Salah is dua, right? So if they just read dua, it would not be the intended meaning. So the Prophet explained to him what the Salah was and how to make Salah and how to offer Salah, right? Zakat, originally it means growth. The Prophet had to explain the Shari'i meaning behind it, right? To give your poor, do the zakat, to pay the charity, the alms once a year, right? And etc., such and such. So as time passed, the Prophet ﷺ, he taught obviously all that was necessary to the companions, and the companions amongst themselves, they understood the ayat according to the Arabic language, right? And if there was a difference amongst the companions it was usually called اختلاف التنوع لا اختلاف التضاد, which means that it was like a difference of adding extra meanings, not actual differences of like going opposite to each other, right? In general, I'm saying. So all of these are accepted. For example, one companion says it means X, another companion says it means, Y also, and they both don't contradict each other. It's okay, right? So you start developing the tafsir of the different companions, radiallahu anhum, and not all companions knew all the words either, but as a total, all the Sahaba radiallahu anhum together, they knew the whole meaning of the Qur'an. The first point, not knowing all the meaning, for example, Umar radiallahu anhu, he was on the minbar one time, and he said, he recited from Surah Al-Nahl, أو يأخذهم على تخوف فإن ربكم لرؤوف رحيم, that takhawuf usually means something like to be scared of. But he asked, he stopped in the middle of the khutbah, which shows his humbleness, and he asked, what is takhawuf? Like, obviously he knows khawf, but he was like, takhawuf, in this context, what does it mean? Imagine like the Umar, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Khalifa, one of the most knowledgeable people of the Ummah, he stops in the middle of his khutbah to ask. It shows how humble, radiallahu anhu, he was, right? To ask for clarification of one of the words, which means he doesn't know every single word in the Qur'an, but all the Sahaba together, they do. So one of the Sahabi, he stood and he said, this is from the language of Hudayl. And he recited a poem. In the poem was the word takhawufan, and it had the meaning of making low, right? And he took that meaning, and that way he said, this is what fits in this ayah. And he thanked the person. And this is one of the famous statement. He said, عليكم بديوان العرب فإن به فهم كلام ربكم. I advise you with the diwan of the Arab, meaning the poetry of the Arabs, because verily in it is the understanding of the words of your Lord. Right? The Qur'an was revealed in the Arabic language, and the poetry is the strongest form before the Qur'an was revealed. So knowing the poetry from Jahiliyyah, the Sahaba were able to understand the Qur'an in the best sense. 4 major schools of tafsir developed, and that was Abdullah ibn Umar, Ubay ibn Ka'ab, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and Ali radiallahu anhuma. They were the 4 most known for explaining the Qur'an. And schools of thought developed from these companions radiallahu anhum. The famous one, like Bil Manthur, which is the narrations, is from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. He had basically Mujahid learned from him, and Ikramah and Ibn Jubayr and others. Some of the tabi'een, they learned from Ibn Abbas. They took all his statements, like it's reported upon Mujahid that he read the whole Qur'an in front of Ibn Abbas from beginning to end 3 times, asking him about every single ayah. So imagine this knowledge he got from Ibn Abbas. It's a tribute to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that he says, I know every ayah of the Qur'an, its meaning, where it was revealed, when it was revealed, and to whom it was revealed about, if there was somebody it was revealed about. So this shows that the Sahaba had ilm of the Qur'an. And this is something that is necessary for us as Muslims to believe, because they passed it down to us. They are the gold standard in tafsir, the companions radiallahu anhu. Why would we say this? Why does it make sense that the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, are the gold standard in tafsir? The highest proofs you can say for explanation. It was revealed to them, basically. They lived with the Prophet ﷺ. What else? They learned directly from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? So the Qur'an was revealed to Muhammad ﷺ. He taught his companions directly. So they actually witnessed the revelation, why it was revealed, to whom it was revealed, when it was revealed, to whom, actually the Prophet ﷺ, but about whom about was revealed, right? They witnessed it. They know the ahwal. What is the ahwal? Ahwal is very important in tafsir. Ahwal is like the circumstances. So they saw the mushrikeen with their own eyes, right? They saw Ahl Kitab, Al-Yahud, Nasara, how they lived. They saw the Muslims, and if there was disputes amongst the Muslims in the revelation that came. So they knew exactly how to apply the Qur'an. Right? They were given this blessings, that's why they were the best generation. They got to live with the Prophet ﷺ and hear the Qur'an directly from his mouth and learn about its explanation directly from him. So that's why they are the gold standard of tafsir. After that, the tabi'een started recording the tafsir from, like I said, main schools of Sahabi radiallahu anhum. And I won't get into too much detail, but basically it started developing until it's called Tafsir bil-Manthur wa Tafsir bil-Ijtihad or Tafsir bil-Ra'i. Right? There will be an explanation with narrations, like narrations of the companions radiallahu anhum, or there will be tafsir with explanation, like kind of deriving rulings, either from asbab al-nuzul, like the reasons of revelation, or from the Arabic language, or for poetry, certain poetry, for example. So the alim would take, there's no direct relation or narration, but he's using his mind to come with an explanation of the Qur'an, right? So those are the two major schools of tafsir that developed, and both of them have their pluses and minuses. The manthur, basically, if it comes from a companion and it's authentic, that's like the gold standard, khalas. The ijtihadi, obviously there can be right and there can be wrong. And we can find that, for example, one of the older tafsirs, Tafsir Tabari, rahimahullah, it's one of the best tafsirs. It's like the encyclopedia of tafsirs. They combine both of them, but in his tafsir he would do tarjih sometimes between the ara or ijtihadat of ra'i. This book, he took all the narrations, that he can find, basically authentic, non-authentic, all the difference of opinions, the Arabic language, the poetry, grammar, almost everything you can think of for tafsir, subhanAllah, rahimahullah, he gathered it together and put it in this beautiful book, which is called, the explanation of Imam Al-Tabari, right? This book is like an encyclopedia. And most books after it, in one way or another, benefited from this book. But he encompasses both of these two opinions. And then you find other tafsir start to develop in different specialties. So we said tafsir of manthur, narrations, tafsir of ra'i, individual exegesis, basically coming to like an understanding of it. And then they started getting even to more specialized fields. So you'll find certain tafsir that focus only on the Arabic language, or mainly on the Arabic language. You'll find certain tafsir that focus on the ahkam, right? The rules and regulations in the Qur'an. Certain tafsir, Arabic language or poetry, qira'at. There'll be tafsir specifically for qira'at. There'll be tafsir specifically for nahw, for grammar, right? And so on and so forth. There develops hundreds, if not thousands, of different tafsir. And this shows the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From this one book, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so many different explanations came about that can fill this whole masjid, right? And this is the beauty of learning tafsir, and this is the beauty of studying the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kullu yawmin huwa fi shan. Every day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating something new, right? Something new is coming into existence. So there's always some new type of development, and that's my question now. Can there be a new tafsir? Yes? Yes or no? Why? Is it yes? No, please.
Tafsir, yes, because the Qur'an is timeless book, right?
MashaAllah, yes.
Understanding increased always.
Okay, so this brother says yes, there can be new tafsir because the Qur'an is timeless and there's always some new developments. طيب. Anybody else have a different opinion? So I say yes and no. No, in certain circumstances, only, like for example, the Prophet ﷺ explained something in a specific way. We can't come now and say, oh, well, it really means this. The Prophet ﷺ was wrong, right? There's an authentic narration from the Prophet ﷺ, or an authentic narration from the companion. Why? Because the companion, if he says something about the Book of Allah, especially in certain abwab like the ahkam and aqaid and stuff like that, it's from the Prophet ﷺ, so they're not going to make up stuff, right? So in general, we cannot come and refute that. But if it's something that there's a difference of opinion on, or if something that there's new discoveries about, then it's fine, of course, to bring a new explanation in tafsir. Of course, not for every single person to just come, like, picks up the book and starts making tafsir like his own. Obviously, you have to reach the level of ijtihad, and that requires, mashallah, a lot of training and specialization and ilm and knowledge to be one of the great scholars to make that ijtihad of tafsir. But in general, as long as it doesn't contradict the usul, there is means for new tafsir. There's means for like adding extra benefits. The Sahaba, like I said, they differed sometimes in explanations. The Qur'an is never stagnant. It's a living book. It's always like something, subhanAllah, you can drive something new to it. Even personally, if you have a personal relationship with the Qur'an, just by yourself reading it over and over again, you never get bored from it. And every time, like if you're paying attention, you're going to find some new benefit. Sometimes something in your life happens and you go to the Qur'an and subhanAllah, it's like right there for you. This is the guidance. This is the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to us directly. Also, there are different qira'at that show that there's different meanings that can be acceptable. Like the brother said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly creating, so therefore there is room for new tafsir. There's constant scientific discoveries. Sometimes that can explain the tafsir. So for example, in the past, some mufassirin said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows the unseen, and from those things that are mentioned in the unseen, in the ayah, if you go back and read it directly, it doesn't say like la ya'lamuha illallah, but this part says wa ya'lamu ma fil arham. He knows what is in the arham, what's the womb of the mother, right? So it's a fine detail that it really didn't come about until like modern times, that it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what the child will be like in the future. If he'll be healthy or sick, he'll be poor or rich, or he will live a long life or a short life, right? But now we can see who is in the womb. You can see who's a male or female, right? In the past, the tafsir said that you can't know who is male or female. But now we have scientific discoveries that yes, you can tell male or female. So that's a new benefit, a new tafsir to this ayah. Allah says, يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ. It didn't say that nobody else can know what's in the arham in that sense. But nobody can know the lifespan of the individual for sure. Nobody can know if the individual will be born healthy or sick, if he will be born alive or dead, if he will live a long life or a short life. This is from Alim al-Ghayb, right? But in general, like I said, so that tafsir was added upon with new discoveries. That's just one example. There's many other examples, but the class is not for that. I'm just giving you kind of like hints from here and here, inshallah. So hopefully we benefit. The tafsir of the Sahaba or the Salaf is generally a hujjah, like we said, as long as it's not possible to have ijtihad in that matter. So if it's a matter that's open for ijtihad, obviously new tafsirs can come. If it's something closed for ijtihad, like there's no room in debating the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels exist, the Jannah and Nar, certain ahkam, etc. Right? We can't come back and say there's new ahkam, there's a new Jannah, there's not a Nar, there's no prophets, anything like that. A'udhu billah, we can never say that. But those things that are not muttafaqun alayhi, or in the bab of in the chapter of not allowing ijtihad in it, there's room for ijtihad. If it's an explanation of when and why an ayat was revealed, obviously you don't have ijtihad in that matter, because you could not have known, you weren't there. The Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they were there. The qira'at, obviously you can't come with a new qira'at. If it's not passed down from the Salaf, the previous generations, it's not something that you can open the ijtihad in it. In general, nasikh and mansukh, those ayahs that are abrogated, that's something that is not really ijtihad in, because the time period has passed. Other than that, like I said, there's new discoveries, new fawaid, new creations, new situations. Sometimes new situations arise that haven't really arisen in the past, like nawazil, right? So you need new application of certain verses, right? All this, inshallah, is permissible, and it's encouraged because, like we said, the Qur'an is not stagnant. It's always for us to keep growing and to benefiting and learning and like applying it to our lives. It's a solution for all time, right? It's the last book, the final message. It's good from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until the end of time, right? So therefore, if new situations come, obviously there's going to be some answers applied from the Qur'an. The Salaf, radiallahu anhum, like Imam Al-Tabari and others, said that we don't allow differing with the previous generations if the statement is something that is widespread, that indicates that there is no other understanding except that understanding, right? So if something happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ or the time of the Sahaba, and it was an incident that many people witnessed, and something was said about that incident, we can't have ijtihad in that matter, right? Because it was determined in their lifetime, and it's impossible for them to like all pass down the same statement and be wrong about it. In terms of if there's a difference of opinion amongst the Salaf, in general, like I said, it's usually for tanaw'a, which means like adding more meaning to it. But if it's some type of like complete difference of opinion, some scholars say that you can come up with another opinion because they differed on that opinion. Other scholars say no, you have to stick to those two opinions only, like Imam Ibn Arabi and Abu Hasan Ash'ari. Others, they said you can't go out of that. You can't develop a third opinion, right? But other scholars say that no, because they differ on it, you're allowed to come up with a different opinion, as long as it doesn't go against the usul, obviously. And like I said, subhanAllah, like where there's a constant change in like wars and family matters and community and politics and etc. So it's befitting for the Qur'an to make, be effective for all times. The more you can ponder upon it, the more you can apply it. Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Is it not, won't they ponder upon the Qur'an? Because in the Qur'an is a solution for every single need that you have, right? And then somebody, he tried to be funny before, he said, I know there's something that's not in the Qur'an. You say that, whatever you need is in the Qur'an. He said, yes, I say that. The Shaykh was trying to like make fun of the Shaykh or play games with him. And he said, yes, I stand by that. Everything we need is in the Qur'an. He said, okay, I want to know how to bake bread. I don't see that ayah in the Qur'an. Right? It's not there. He said, of course it is there. He said, show me. He said, didn't Allah say, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ? Go ask the people of knowledge if you do not understand. Right? So he's trying to be smart, and the Imam like outsmarted him. He's saying that everything you need literally is there. Right? So in general, it's the meaning for the success in this world and the next world. But also, Allah tells us in situations that we can go and seek knowledge from anywhere. If we need a certain knowledge, it's obligatory upon the Muslims to attain that knowledge. Whether it be in science or math or physics or whatever it may be. Right? So we're always supposed to be on top. The best ummah. Like, another point before getting into like some qawaid or principles, how do we develop what's called malaka of tafsir, proficiency or knowledge in tafsir, right? Brother Farhan, mashallah, gave me a nice book that I think was given to him by Brother Uthman. He passed it on. It had some nice pointers in it, but basically developing an understanding of the tafsir so that you can like benefit for yourself. Like, how can you learn how to become a mufassir? How can you learn to make tafsir of the Qur'an, right? Obviously, it's a long journey. First of all, you have to realize that the Quranic studies or tafsir is a lifetime journey. Like we said, if you spent from now until the day you die, most likely reading the tafsirs that are available, you probably won't be able to finish. It's too many, right? MashaAllah. And this is from the miracle of the Qur'an. But to learn, to study like the usul of the tafsir, and to learn like the principles of tafsir, and like how we can develop this malaka, like a kind of like a skill set of making tafsir, is something that we can inshallah aspire to. Basically, we want to develop like a self-study program where we can build a skill set that can help us in understanding tafsir, and maybe one day being able to like make a tafsir in a sense. I'm not saying that you have to become an alim and a scholar, but just for your own benefit to learn how the scholars come about. So basically, you read on your own. This is what the Shaykh was saying, that, like, say for example, now we start with Tafsir Al-Baghawi. For example, we're going to start from, I'm hoping to start from the beginning and go on. Well, I'll ask you guys if you want to do like a different, juz or something like that, inshallah. But in general, if I start from the beginning, you go to a juz that you were not studying or you haven't really studied before, and you start to read it on your own. Just, inshallah, this is for those that know Arabic, obviously. Start reading the ayat and then thinking, okay, what does it mean? First of all, do I understand this ayah? You can go ayah by ayah or 5 ayats, whatever you want to choose. There's something that you can like practice with. So you read the ayah. Okay, do I understand the ayah? Do I know all the words in the ayah? Right? Okay, I don't know this word. Okay, then you go back to the Arabic dictionaries. The older ones is preferred. and you look up the meaning of this word and that word, right? Then you go see like how much of this meaning do I have down like 100%. I understand the ayah, I understand all the Arabic words of it, right? Then you go to the next stage and you see is there another ayah in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that explains this ayah? Is it under a certain category? Will it fit like in a certain subject matter where other ayats are, right? And then you go and say, okay, did the Prophet ﷺ, he say anything about this ayah? Is there any hadith about the ayah? Right? Like I said, it's 1 or 5, whatever you're picking, like your section of ayat you're going through. And then, after all of this, you go and start reading the different tafsir of the ayah. Right? So the first part, you go and you say, for example, let's start Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right? Just the one ayah. So you go and you break it up. What are the words in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? So you have ba, bi, bismi, right? Ism, the name. Allah, Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right? So technically 5 components to this one verse. What does Nabi mean? What is ba? Right? What is ism? What is Allah? Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Go back. What are the root words? What is it derived from? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mushtaq? Is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala derived from another verb or word or 3-letter word? Or is it something that is built like that? It's not derived. Right? Ism, same thing. Ar-Rahman, same thing. Ar-Rahim, same thing. Okay, what's the relationship between Rahman and Rahim? Where do they both come from? How are they different? Rahim, someone who is kind, merciful. Why is Rahman? What's Rahim? How is it different from that? Right? Little by little, until you get all the words by yourself, and then you go, okay, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? Where else is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim revealed? Obviously, every first verse in the surahs, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right? Which other surah is it not like the first part of the surah? Right? Innahu qawlun Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right? In 2 places. So you go and you start putting that together. Okay, what did the Prophet said about the Bismillah? Every affair that starts without mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cut off. Another ahadith. Okay, what did the Mufassirin say about Bismillah? What's the nahu behind it? What's the grammar behind it? What's the fiqh behind it? What's all this until you really understand the ayah. And then you go to the next one. Or if you're doing 5 at a time, for example, you do that 5. And you go to the next set. And that way you're building what's called malaka. You're building a deeper knowledge of tafsir. So then you can appreciate what the mufassirin are doing for us and making it easy for us. In general, like I said, the previous generations in understanding the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the closest to the Arabic language. They know the book the best, right? The best tafsir of all is first and foremost explaining the ayah with what? With the Qur'an. Why? The strongest evidence is the Qur'an. What else? That's true, but before we're sticking this point right now, why is the istishhad bil ayah awla? Why is there using the Qur'an to explain the Qur'an first and foremost? Why? Yes, and what about who knows Allah better than Allah? No one. لا أحد أعلم من الله بالله من الله. Nobody knows Allah better than himself, obviously. So if Allah is explaining the ayah, then khalas. That's the best explanation. That's the highest form of tafsir. Right? After that, who? What? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Basically, nobody knows Allah from His creation better than our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So if he's explaining the ayah, obviously after Allah Azza wa Jal, He will explain it in the best of manners. Right? And then after the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it goes to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And then after that, the tabi'een, and then in those generations, basically the room for tafsir comes to, the great scholars of Islam. So this is the manhaj that we will go upon, inshallah, in trying to understand the Book of Allah and get closer to the meaning of the Book of Allah. I've chose Tafsir Al-Baghawi mainly because the brother asked me, mashallah, Jazakallah khair, he gets a reward for this dars. He asked me specifically for Tafsir Al-Baghawi. And then I thought about it and I was like, why not? Because I haven't particularly read this tafsir yet. And I was thinking that, like I said, I want musharaka. So most people have Tafsir Ibn Kathir, right? Ibn Kathir and Al-Baghawi are almost like, you can say, the summary of a Tabari, right? They're the closest in manhaj to a Tabari, and they took, basically, obviously, they added their own to it as well. But they, it's like, we obviously not going to be able to finish Tabari or read the Tabari here is too long, but we get the next best thing, inshallah. Also, most of the Ummah agreed upon, their scholarship and their khidmah of the deen, right? So I figured we'll go with this tafsir, and most people have Tafsir Ibn Kathir, or they can read Tafsir Ibn Kathir, they can bring that with them, or they can read the same ayat that we're going through and contribute it. If you have another tafsir, inshallah, feel free to go along with that tafsir. Whatever you have to make it easy for yourself, and we go together, inshallah. And if you hear, for example, you don't hear something that you've read and you think it's beneficial, I would like you to contribute, inshallah, because that will make us all grow in knowledge, right? That's the goal. Another cool thing, mashallah, is that, I didn't have the tafsir. I have a whole library. It's overseas. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get it for a long time. But I spent most of my life gathering it, and then, qadr it's kind of stuck. But so I didn't have a tafsir with me. And then, subhanAllah, a brother called Imam Farhan, and he's like, I have a couple of books I want to kind of unload. And he mentioned Tafsir Al-Baghawi in this. He's like, do you know anybody that can benefit from it? And he was like, yes. And then mashallah, I got a weird text from a brother. He's saying, do you know Tafsir Al-Baghawi? And I was like, who's this? I said, yes, of course, mashallah. And then alhamdulillah, that worked out. So it was like alamat khair, alhamdulillah, to go with this book. And inshallah, we can all learn together and benefit. Like I said, this is one of the best of the ulum, and it's kind of neglected. Mashallah, we have a couple of different lessons going on throughout the week. I think that if somebody can attend them all or a lot of them, they can build a nice foundation. Kind of like a little mini university here. We have, explanation of a Muslim, fiqh Shafi'i, brother Shaykh, Imam Burhan Muslim, brother Uthman is explaining the fiqh of Imam Shafi'i. We have Iyad al-Salihin one night, Tafsir Baghawi, inshallah. Sheikh Shakir, he does tafsir also. There's a class on Tazkiyah, there's a class on Mustalah Hadith. Mashallah, so if we can put these things together, I think we'll have a beneficial foundation at the very least. And like I said, trying to fulfill the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ of us gathering together to study the book of Allah Azza wa Jal and to benefit from it and to be of those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down His mercy and His sakina and His angels to cover us and to mention us, inshallah, with Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ikhlas and tawfiq, and jazakallah khair. If you have any questions, we can open up after the adhan for a couple minutes, and then we can pray sunnah, inshallah.